Lastly, remember that whether you are building a kit or recovering a standard category aircraft, you'll need to have some paperwork completed by an authorized person before you fly. An A&P with an inspection authorization can sign the 337 major alteration form required if you are recovering a standard category airplane. If you are building a kit, you'll eventually need an airworthiness certificate. A person from the FAA or a DAR, designated airworthiness representative, will need to issue that. Either way, identify and meet with the person who will complete your paperwork before you start. Ready to begin? Let's go. We are going to use two different wings during the course of this video, one from a 1959 Piper Tri-Pacer and the other from a 1928 New Standard. We do this to demonstrate that the process and techniques in using the polyfiber covering system are the same, whether you have wood or aluminum as your structure. In addition, you will use the same steps we perform here on every surface you cover, whether it's the fuselage, tail surfaces, or ailerons. As you see, we have left the Tri-Pacer wing covered to demonstrate how to remove the old cover. When you remove old fabric from a surface, particularly wings and fuselage, try to keep it intact as much as possible. Old fabric makes a good template. It shows you where to put inspection access holes, where to cut holes in the fuselage for rudder cables, and so on. Before uncovering a surface in which there are inspection holes, look in each location to be sure there is really something there to see. Cut them all out if that hasn't already been done, and look. When uncovering wings, use a razor blade to cut fabric away from the butt rib, then trailing edge, aileron well, and wingtip. Be careful not to score the wood, aluminum, or fiberglass with the blade. Cutting the fabric off dulls the blade quickly, so change it often. You'll be glad you do. It's hard enough to get old fabric off when the blade is sharp, let alone when it's dull. Turn the wing over and do the same. The fabric can sometimes be pulled off in one piece at this point from the leading edge. This is good if you're going to copy the paint scheme onto the new cover job, and it is complicated, like many aerobatic airplanes with stars, bursts, and so forth. Once the fabric has been removed, your work really begins. You must now prepare the wing for its new fabric. It's easy to see the Tri-Pacer wing isn't ready. All this old masking tape and residue from the old coatings must be taken off. Much of it can be washed off with MEK. At times, a Scotch pad is necessary, sometimes sandpaper. Do whatever you have to do to get the surface clean. Take your time. The surface must be clean and free of old flaking varnish, old primers, rust, masking tape, coatings, anything left on from the previous cover job. You get the idea. A rule of thumb you'll hear over and over during this video is this: if you can feel it, you'll see it in the end. Be sure the surface is clean. Even dirt dauber nests have to go. Before covering any structure, it should be carefully inspected throughout. This could mean taking off the leading edge, removing paint buildup from the spar ends and attach points or die checking fittings. Inspect everything. Get an A&P with experience to look at the structure as well. You can't be too careful. Now's the time to catch any problems and repair them. This broken wood on the New Standard wing is a good example of what you may find upon inspection. If the fabric is screwed onto the ribs, now is the time to check that the pre-drilled holes in the ribs have not been enlarged. Notice how this screw in the leading edge is spinning in the hole. The same will happen on the ribs if the hole has been enlarged. Make sure the proper size screw will tighten in each hole. Drill new holes as necessary. If the fabric is riveted to the wing, check to see if these holes have been enlarged. Fabric rivets are 1/8 inch rivets. To check the integrity of the existing holes, use a copper-colored Cleco and make sure it holds securely. If not, drill a new hole. If the leading edge is dented, either replace it or fill the voids with superfill. Superfill is light, doesn't shrink, and is very easy to sand to the proper contour when dry. It is mixed either by volume or by weight and then spread over the area being filled with a squeegee until smooth. Smoothing it out at this stage will reduce sanding time later. When dry, block sand until smooth. More can be added if necessary until the void is filled. When you varnish wood structures or prime metal surfaces, you must use a 2-part epoxy varnish or primer on the surface wherever the fabric will touch. They are unaffected by the chemicals in the polyfiber liquids. No one-part spray-on zinc chromate, no one-part spar varnish. The chemicals in the polyfiber liquids will lift and wrinkle the one-part products. You may be sitting there saying to yourself, well, I don't know what's on there, one part or two. Here's a test. Soak a rag in MEK. Place the rag on the part in question and come back in about 15 minutes. If the primer or varnish is all over the rag, then you need to recoat with an epoxy varnish or primer. Usually, it is not necessary to remove one-part varnish or primer if it is in good condition. Brushing or spraying a two-part varnish or primer over the one part is okay, but do a test spot first just to make sure. If the MEK on the rag doesn't affect the primer or varnish, you're fine. Here is an area of one-part zinc chromate sprayed from this can. Obviously, this isn't doing much protecting of the metal and will transfer to the fabric during the covering process. There is an excellent section in your polyfiber manual about preparing wood, aluminum, steel, and fiberglass for cover. Be sure to read pages 9 through 11. Okay, we're going to proceed as if our tri-pacer and new standard wings are clean and ready to cover.